You have logged 5,000 accident-free hours, passed every FAA exam, and kept your skills razor-sharp. Yet overnight, your insurance premium jumps from $2,000 to $8,000, and a letter arrives. You are grounded, not by law or medicine, but by a form stamped with your birth year. Why are the safest, most experienced pilots being sidelined while the FAA imposes no upper age limit? The system insists you are too old to insure, but the real reason is hidden in plain sight, and it is not about safety. The stakes are not just financial, they threaten the very idea of earned trust in aviation. How did loyalty and skill become a liability? The answer upends everything pilots and their families thought they knew. Bob has flown the same Cherokee for decades. His logbook stretches back to the 70s, page after page, weather clear, landing smooth, not a single accident or violation in 5,000 hours. Every year he passed his medical with no restrictions. Every 2 years he aced his flight review. FAA never blinked. The bank never called. For 40 years the system told Bob he was the definition of a safe pilot. One morning a letter arrives. The envelope looks official, but the words inside cut deeper than any failed check ride. The premium for his policy has jumped from $2,000 to $8,000, effective immediately. Stamped in red, non-renewal. No explanation about his record, no mention of his training, just a number, his age, circled in the margin. He calls his broker, expecting a mistake. The broker sighs. "I'm sorry, Bob. The underwriters have a new rule. No new policies over 75. They say it is out of my hands." Bob runs his finger down the columns of his logbook. 0 accidents, 0 claims. 30 years of loyalty wiped away in a single page of corporate policy. FAA still says he is legal. His doctor still signs off. But the insurance company has decided he is too old to trust in the left seat. What is written in his logbook means nothing compared to what is printed on his birth certificate. For Bob, and for thousands like him, the message is clear. Skill, discipline, and experience are no longer enough. The system has changed the rules, and it is not about safety. It is about numbers on a spreadsheet. Bob dials his broker a second time, hoping for a solution. Instead, he is told there is a new condition. If he wants to keep flying, he will need a safety pilot in the right seat. It does not matter that Bob has flown 5,000 hours without a scratch. It does not matter that his medical is spotless, his training is current, his judgment proven. The insurer now insists on a co-pilot, often someone half his age, sometimes a kid just out of flight school, with a fraction of Bob's experience. For Bob, this is not about safety. It is about dignity. He has spent decades as pilot in command, teaching others, mentoring younger aviators. Now the company that took his premiums for 30 years has decided he needs a babysitter. The irony stings. The so-called safety pilot is often the one learning from Bob, not the other way around. Yet the policy does not care about logbooks, only about birth dates. This mandate is not written in any FAA regulation. The federal rules say Bob is fit to fly solo. His doctor agrees. But the insurance company algorithm draws a line at 70, and anyone on the wrong side is suddenly treated as a risk, no matter their record. For many older pilots, the requirement is more than an inconvenience. It is a humiliation. The message is clear. Experience and discipline are out. Actuarial shortcuts are in. The result is a cockpit filled with resentment, not reassurance, and a lifetime of trust replaced by a single line in a corporate file. There is no federal law or regulation that grounds Bob at 70 or 75. The FAA, which governs private flying in America, sets no upper age limit for private pilots. As long as a pilot holds a valid medical certificate, whether a traditional third-class certificate or the more recent basic med, they are legal to fly. The rules are clear. Pass your physical, complete your flight review, keep your certificate current. The agency does not care if you are 60, 70, or 90. The only question is whether you meet the medical and proficiency standards. International guidelines follow the same logic for private operations. Even the International Civil Aviation Organization draws the line only for commercial airline pilots, age 60 for single-pilot commercial flights, and 65 for multi-crew operations. For private flying, there is no upper boundary. In Australia and New Zealand, pilots routinely fly well into their 80s, provided they pass more frequent medicals or reviews. And yet Bob, with a spotless record and a current medical, finds himself grounded not by the FAA, but by a private company policy. The letter in his hand is not an official order from Washington. It is a corporate decision made somewhere in an underwriting department based on an age printed on his file. The message is blunt. The law says you are fit, but our spreadsheet says you are not. For decades, the only limits that mattered came from the regulator or the doctor. Now a silent third party has stepped in. The disconnect is jarring. The system that once measured skill and judgment now defaults to a number. The question is no longer, can you fly safely? It is, how old are you? That single factor now outweighs a lifetime of discipline and experience. For Bob and thousands like him, the rules have changed, but not in any regulation you can read. The real power lies in a boardroom, not a cockpit or a clinic. Insurance is supposed to be about risk, but for pilots like Bob, the real risk is not in the cockpit, it is in the boardroom. The price spike in his renewal letter traces back to a world far removed from his local airport. When a hurricane flattens hangars in Florida or a 737 crashes overseas, the bill does not just land on the airlines. It ripples through the global insurance market, hitting every policy tied to an airplane, no matter how small. Reinsurers, the giants who backstop the insurers, take the biggest losses. When their balance sheets bleed, the reaction is swift: raise prices, pull back capacity, and rewrite the rules for everyone down the line. A market analyst explains the cycle. In soft years, when disaster is rare and claims are low, insurers compete hard for business. Age is just another number, and experienced pilots can shop for reasonable rates. But when the market turns hard after back-to-back catastrophes or billion-dollar claims, everything tightens. Underwriters look for quick ways to reduce exposure. They do not have the manpower to evaluate every pilot's logbook, so they reach for what is easy: age bands and aircraft complexity. The result is a matrix, never seen by the customer, but decisive all the same. Columns for age, rows for aircraft type. Cross a certain line, and the answer flips from quote to decline. A broker describes the reality. Some carriers will not touch a pilot over 70. Others will, but only for simple aircraft and only with steep surcharges. The most conservative companies stop quoting new business at 65. By 70, most impose extra requirements, annual simulator rides, third-class medicals, or the infamous safety pilot clause. By 75, many simply refuse to renew, regardless of the pilot's record. The matrix is blunt. It does not care about your 5,000 hours or your accident-free decades. It cares about your age and your airplane. If you are flying a retractable gear single or a twin, the cutoff comes sooner and the premium climbs higher. The same pilot in a fixed gear. Cessna might still get an offer, but even then the price can double or triple overnight. Policy excerpts confirm the pattern. No new policies over age 75. Renewal subject to annual training and co-pilot requirement for pilots over 70. These are not FAA mandates, they are corporate risk controls written in the language of finance, not safety. The underwriter's job is to protect the company's capital, not to reward a lifetime of airmanship. When global losses mount, the easiest way to cut risk is to cut the outliers, the very young, the very old, and anyone flying a complex machine. The broker's refusal is not personal. It is a spreadsheet decision driven by losses halfway around the world. For pilots like Bob, it means the real power over their flying lives sits with a handful of actuaries and market analysts, not with the FAA or with their own doctor. The age rule is not about individual safety. It is about protecting the insurer's bottom line in a volatile market. Insurance companies defend their age cutoffs with a familiar argument. As pilots get older, their reaction times slow, and slower reactions mean more accidents. It sounds scientific, but the data tell a different story. When safety analysts at the NTSB chart accident rates by age, the results are not a simple upward slope. The highest spike is not at 70 or 80. It is in the middle, among pilots in their 40s and 50s. This is the so-called killing zone, where confidence and complexity outpace judgment. Older pilots, by contrast, show up less often in accident statistics, especially when you account for how and when they choose to fly. A Johns Hopkins study of air taxi crashes found that pilot error rates did not increase with age. Whether the pilot was 30 or 60, the odds of an error were nearly the same. The real difference came down to recent experience and the type of flying, not the birth year on a certificate. Other large-scale reviews, including the AOPA Air Safety Institute NOL report, show that older pilots tend to fly fewer hours, stick to familiar routes, and avoid bad weather. They self-regulate, trimming risk long before a medical examiner or regulator ever steps in. The science of aging and cognition offers more clues. Fluid intelligence, quick thinking, and rapid problem-solving peaks in early adulthood and declines slowly over time. But crystallized intelligence, the kind built from decades of experience, pattern recognition, and procedural knowledge, keeps growing well into the 70s. In aviation, that difference matters. A neurocognitive expert explains it this way: the young pilot reacts fast, but the older pilot sees trouble coming and avoids it entirely. In the simulator, older pilots may take a fraction longer to move the controls, but they are also less likely to end up in a situation where reflexes are the only way out. Medical risks do increase with age. Cardiac events, diabetes, and other conditions become more common. But the FAA medical certification process, plus newer options like Basic Med, are designed to catch these problems. Most older pilots voluntarily adjust their flying habits, choosing shorter trips, daytime flights, and avoiding challenging conditions long before they become a true risk. Internationally, countries like Australia and New Zealand allow private pilots to fly well into their 80s, with more frequent reviews but no blanket bans. Their accident rates do not show a late life surge. The numbers are clear. Age alone is a poor predictor of accident risk. What matters is a pilot's recent experience, training, health, and the complexity of the aircraft. Insurers claim that age is an easy proxy for risk, but the evidence shows that it is, at best, a blunt tool, one that sidelines some of the safest, most disciplined aviators in the system. The real risk is not in the left seat, but in the spreadsheet that treats wisdom and caution as liabilities instead of assets. Insurance brokers describe the process as a numbers game, but the rules are hidden from the pilots who live by them. Behind closed doors, underwriters build a risk table. Age is one column, aircraft type is another. The intersection decides your fate. For a pilot in his 70s flying a simple fixed-gear single, the spreadsheet might still produce a quote, albeit with a hefty surcharge. Swap that airplane for a retractable gear model or a twin, and the entire row turns red. No offer, no renewal, sometimes not even a phone call back. A specialist broker explains that it is not just about age. It is age plus what you fly. The older you are, the simpler the underwriters want your airplane to be. The logic is blunt. Complex aircraft, retractables, twins, turbines carry higher claim severity. Gear-up landings, engine failures, and high-speed overruns are expensive for insurers, especially when the pilot is over 70. The algorithm does not weigh your 5,000-hour logbook or your annual simulator sessions. It multiplies risk by age, then again by complexity, and the result is either a premium that triples or a polite refusal to quote at all. This is not a gradual curve. It is a set of cliffs. At 65, some markets disappear. At 70, most impose new requirements or sharp price jumps. By 75, only a handful remain, and they may only offer liability coverage, not hull. The same pilot in the same health can move from a Baron to a Cherokee and suddenly become insurable again. The broker's job becomes less about advocating for your skill and more about matching your birth date and airplane to a shrinking list of underwriters willing to take the bet. For older pilots, the message is clear. If you want to keep flying, you may have to change what you fly because the algorithm has already decided what your risk looks like on paper. A broker sits across from Bob, tablet in hand, running the numbers. "Let's get you a live quote," he says. The first scenario is Bob, age 72, flying his old Cherokee. Liability-only coverage, no hull, comes back at a fraction of last year's premium hike, thanks to a new program built for older pilots. The broker scrolls through Skywatch's application, pointing out that this policy does not demand a third-class medical or a safety pilot. Bob's basic med certificate and flight review are all that are needed. The coverage limit is up to $1 million per occurrence, with the hull value self-insured. For the first time in months, Bob sees a path forward that is not just another rejection letter. The broker explains, "If you were in a Baron or a Twin, the answer would be different. But in a fixed-gear single, the market is opening up again for pilots your age." He mentions that a handful of new products, like the Skywatch liability option and a few boutique underwriters, are pushing back against blanket age bans. Some, like the 5x5 program, have dropped arbitrary age cutoffs altogether, relying on training and recent experience instead of birth dates. Bob jots down a checklist. Fly regularly to keep recent hours strong. Log every training session. Stick to familiar routes. Consider stepping down to a simpler aircraft if the premiums become unsustainable. The broker's advice is blunt. Shop every year. Work with a specialist who knows which companies are still quoting for your age and airplane. And if you cannot get hull coverage, protect yourself and your passengers with liability. For pilots facing forced retirement by spreadsheet, adaptation is the new skill. The checklist is simple. Basic med or a third-class medical, regular training, a simple airplane, and a broker who knows the back doors. The goal is not to win a fight with the algorithm. The goal is to keep flying with your dignity and your logbook intact. Today, thousands of veteran pilots face grounding, not by medical limits, but by a spreadsheet's bias. While the FAA trusts their skill, insurance algorithms erase decades in a single renewal cycle. As populations age, this quiet exclusion spreads beyond aviation. The question is not who gets to fly. The question is who gets to decide when wisdom no longer counts. What would you trust, a number or a lifetime of experience?